My material's not copyrighted. You can use mine any way you want.
This one's for you, Kent.
If you want to get any of my video materials, they're not copyrighted.
Check it out. You're a fucktard, aren't you, Kent? You're a fucktard, aren't you, Kent? You're a fucktard, aren't you, Kent? You're a fucktard, aren't you, Kent?
Hey, it's okay. Don't panic.
This one says, all the matter in the universe, all the matter in the universe was drawn into this little tiny dot, and it spun faster and faster. This is what they teach the kids. Some kids doing this for homework tonight, right? It spun faster and faster. One day, it exploded. Big bang.
No, that doesn't even,
Hey, Lodge, you can't be doing this right now. Get out of here.
What? Why?
Look, dog, I know you wanted to make your video, but I had to reschedule the weekly blood orgy. My guests are coming in like 10 minutes.
Seriously? Man, you knew this was my first night off in ages. You knew I wanted to do the video. You're killing me here.
I'm sorry, Lodge, but I don't know what you want me to do. I'm a busy man. Tomorrow I've got to make sure all the non-Christian babies are being tortured properly, and the next night I got Tybo. Look, we've been having this blood orgy weekly for thousands of years. My friends have adapted to it. I can't delay it for that long. They have blood and semen spurting from their eyes.
But, okay, fine. Where am I supposed to go?
In your room.
Oh, come on, dude. I don't want to go in there. There's millipedes and stuff. That room sucks.
I'm sorry, but it's the best I
Just
can...
save it.
Hey, wait a minute. You want to join in? We have a spare nail gun.
No, you're fucking weird.
Your loss.
Fucking asshole. Sorry, guys. I know my room sucks, but my brother's being a dick. That's why I haven't made a video lately. I've been trying to get out of here. He's been doing that all the fucking time. So I went and got myself a job as a Walmart greeter, which is pretty much the only fucking job that exists down here, and I've been pulling double shifts trying to get enough money for a security deposit. But rents are absurdly high down here. I really don't know where all the fucking demand's coming from, but, anyway, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to get out of here soon. So, let's get going with the video, I guess, or whatever. What did you even say last, Kent?
This one says, all the matter in the universe was drawn into this little tiny dot, and it spun faster and faster. This is what they teach the kids. Some kids doing this for homework tonight, right? It spun faster and faster. One day, it exploded. Big bang.
Right. So, like I was saying, that doesn't even come close to talking about the Big Bang. As the nebula shrank, it spun faster and faster. Gradually, the spinning nebula flattened into a huge disk almost 10 billion kilometers across. At the center of the disk, a growing protosun, or new sun, began to take shape. Yada yada yada, a star, our sun, was born. Now, pop quiz. What could this book mean by our sun? Actually, you know what? That question might just be a little bit beyond your level, so I'll make it multiple choice. Is it A, the universe, B, Kent Hovind's magnificently huge brain, C, Eric Hovind, or D, the obvious answer that my audience, unlike yours, is too intelligent to need stated? That there's a pretty tough quiz, eh, Kent?
I was talking to a professor from Berkeley one time. I was sitting on the airplane next to a professor from Berkeley University. I don't know if you folks here in Idaho ever heard of Berkeley or not. But Berkeley is not a Bible college. So we got talking about the Big Bang, and he said he believed in the Big Bang theory. I said, yes, sir, I figured that. You have to teach it at Berkeley. I said, tell me, sir, how did the universe get here? He said, well, 20 billion years ago...
Hold on. I'm going to stop you right there. Did this guy really say 20 billion years ago? If so, I have to ask what he was a professor of at Berkeley, since you didn't mention it, and my guess would be that it's not something relevant to cosmology, which, if that's true, would lead me to my follow-up question, which is, if he's a professor of something unrelated to cosmology, why would you consider him an authority on cosmology?
He said, well, 20 billion years ago, all the matter was squished in this little tiny dot, and it was spinning real fast, and it exploded. Big Bang. And pieces flew off and became the galaxies and the sun, the moon, the stars, and finally, people. Here we are.
Yeah, definitely not a cosmology professor, although I kinda suspect now that you just made him up.
12 years ago, I moved to Pensacola, Florida. Some article came out in the newspaper that said dinosaur bones found in Montana from 80 million years ago. I wrote my first letter to the editor in my life, about 12 years ago. I wrote a letter to the editor. I said, yes, they found dinosaur bones, and yes, it was 40 feet long, and yes, it was found in Montana, but it was not from 80 million years ago. This one probably drowned in the flood in the days of Noah, 4,400 years ago. And you would have thought I shot the sacred cow. Actually, I did.
You actually shot the sacred cow. You went to India and you found a sacred cow and you shot it. Look, I think Hinduism's silly too, but you're just an asshole.
Boy, there began to be quite a battle in the newspaper, letters to the editor flying back and forth, and finally a university called me and asked me to do a debate with one of their professors. Well, I'd never had a debate in my life except with my wife, and I lost those every time. So I was not excited about debating, but I said, well, how do you do it? What do you want? And the guy said, well, you send us 30 questions, and the other guy will send in 30 questions, and we'll discuss those questions for the debate. I said, okay. So I sent him 30 questions. I thought they were perfectly legitimate, fair questions. I said, a woodpecker's tongue goes all the way around the back of his head and comes on top of his left eyebrow, left nostril here. Would you please show me any fossils that have been found, intermediate species between a normal bird and a woodpecker, with his tongue going all the way around his head? What evidence do you have of how this evolved? That question never came up. I don't know what happened to it, but...
Are you saying you expect to find transitional fossils that show the evolution of every difference between every species? Yeah, that's reasonable. Why not just insist that we find a fossil of every single individual while you're at it? Millions of transitional fossils have been found, but no matter how many there ever are, until every individual is found, you'll just keep coming along saying, well, what about that particular one? Well, Kent, nothing about that particular one because we don't need that particular one. The point is the pattern, and the pattern is shown very clearly by the ones we already have. It's just silly to look at all the evidence that all these different birds evolved to have different traits and then say, but look, the woodpecker has a bit of a different tongue, so it was specifically created. Basically what you're saying is that even though the preponderance of the evidence shows that birds share a common ancestor with each other, we should throw all that away because you think the woodpecker's confusing. The funny thing is, it's not even confusing. When the woodpecker is born, its tongue is just like every other bird. It's as it gets older that the muscle extends over its head. And the main selection factor for this trait is that it gives it a longer tongue to extend into the holes that it bores in the trees to get its prey. I fail to see the difficulty. And the sad thing is, you could have looked up that answer, and since you're the kind of person who believes in the evolution of birds from other birds, you had no reason not to accept it. You've said yourself at the beginning of the video you believe in microevolution within kinds, which I'm assuming would be within bird kind. Or is bird kind too general? Is there a woodpecker kind and a chicken kind and an eagle kind, or what? What are you trying to demonstrate here, Kent? Did God let microevolution happen for a while within bird kind once they got off the ark, but then he realized woodpeckers were just too complicated and so he had to start poofing them into existence all over the place? What was so complicated about it? Did the old peckerhead get his brains rattled?
I said, termites chew on wood and they swallow it, but termites can't digest it. It goes into their stomach, and there's little tiny critters in their intestines that actually digest the cellulose. Now, those little critters can't live without the termite, and those termites can't live without those critters. Which one evolved first?
You conveniently left out the most important word. Let me revise your summary just a little.
Termites chew on wood and they swallow it, but termites can't digest it. It goes into their stomach, and there's little tiny critters in their intestines that actually digest the cellulose. Now, those little critters can't live without the termite
Anymore.
and those termites can't live without those critters.
Anymore. See, Kent, you're treating this as though it's a challenge for evolution, but in fact, it's only challenging if you ignore the entire concept of evolution. If two different species find each other useful, but they don't critically depend upon each other for survival, they can start to evolve to be more suited to each other because they're constantly interacting. They find each other useful, their survival rate is higher together, and so they keep living together and working together, and as time passes, they become more and more dependent on each other until eventually they can't live without each other. Codependent species are very easy to explain if you have even the slightest understanding of evolution. Now, I guess I should clarify that when I talk about this in terms of codependent species, I'm talking about gut flora in general, not the wood-digesting kind, because I assumed that that was what you were asking about. Gut flora are common. We have them too. The wood-digesting capability of the termite gut flora likely came long after codependence between organisms in their gut flora, and long before termites.
But anyway, one of my favorite things to do is asking questions to people who believe in evolution.
And on your list of favorite things to do, where does listening to the answers fall?
So I asked this professor if I could ask him some questions about the Big Bang. He said, sure, what would you like to know? I said, well, sir, you told me 20 billion years ago all the matter in the universe was squished in this little tiny dot. And it was spinning faster and faster and exploded. I said, where did all this matter come from? He said, well, we don't know that for sure. I said, okay, now, sir, hold it. If I told you that I believe about 6,000 years ago God created the heaven and the earth like the Bible teaches, you're going to say, and where did God come from?
No, I think what he'd say if you were actually a professor and not just, made up, is where's your evidence that the universe was created 6,000 years ago, and how do you know a God did it?
You're going to say, and where did God come from? And I don't know.
Dude, just make up an answer and say you know. That's how you answer every other question.
But you said 20 billion years ago there was a Big Bang, and you don't know where the dirt came from.
Just to be clear, definitely not dirt. Jesus fucking Christ, Kent. A universe is not a nebula. Not that dirt would be the right word for a nebula either. I suppose that since you can't even understand that, it's also no surprise that you can't understand that the questions where God or the pre-Big Bang, whatever it was, came from are irrelevant to the questions of if the Big Bang happened and if there's a God and what it did and when. Yeah, I'm gonna explain this again since it seems like you didn't get it the first time. If you're watching this video right now, I assure you, you would still be able to see it even if you didn't have the slightest idea what electricity is. We can see the craters on the moon without knowing about asteroids. Your son Eric? Yeah, he can know that he exists without knowing that you fucked his mom, which he probably still doesn't. And we can know the Big Bang happened without knowing where, if anywhere, the original something came from. We don't need to know causes to detect effects. So regardless of whether we fully understand what was there before the Big Bang and how it got there, we at least have a good reason to accept the Big Bang as the best current explanation for the observed facts, and now we can proceed to investigate the cause in more detail. The only way we stand a chance of figuring out the true answer is if we accept that we don't know it yet. If we just make up an answer based on no research and then attach ourselves to it emotionally, we have no chance at all of ever discovering true answers, and unfortunately that's exactly the situation you've trapped yourself in to such an extreme degree that you can't even accept any part of observed reality that contradicts the fable you've latched onto.
So basically I believe in the beginning God, and you believe in the beginning dirt.
Sometimes this YouTube thing makes me feel a little guilty because there's a slight, just very slight chance that you're sincerely as simple-minded as you act, which I suppose would make me a bit cruel. But then I remember that you're most likely just another religious whore who for a few dollars will cynically ejaculate further nonsensical claims into those ears which are already sealed against reality by the long-dried and hardened auricular bukkake of putrid creationist discharge with which they've been thoroughly injected and caked. And once I remember that, I feel good about myself again.
Don't tell me my theory is religious and yours is science. Oh no, sir, they're both religious.
To use my previous example, believing the Big Bang accurately models observed reality is as religious as believing there are craters on the moon.
The news media tries to make it look like it is religion versus science. I did a debate in El Paso, Texas here recently, and the news media wrote an article. They said, religious and scientific leaders debate evolution. What is the unspoken message in that title? What are they trying to imply? Can you catch that? They're trying to imply that evolution is part of science, aren't they?
No, actually. They would be fully justified if they did, but the title is Religious and Scientific Leaders Debate Evolution. This implies that the topic is evolution, and that one side is arguing for some position related to it and the other against that position. It doesn't imply which side is arguing for what. In fact, the title itself doesn't at all imply that evolution is part of science. It includes the word religious, it includes the word scientific, and it includes the word evolution. The word evolution is not linked to either the word scientific or the word religious, so it'd be equally valid for me to read it the other way and say it says evolution's part of religion. Of course, I wouldn't do that because I'm not the one trying to promote a paranoid conspiracy persecution narrative. It doesn't even tell me if the religious leaders are arguing for or against evolution. For example, the two sides of the debate could be some scientists and religious leaders on one side and some on the other, and the religious leaders on one side accept evolution and believe it fits with their theology, and the ones on the other side don't. As a matter of fact, I have trouble imagining a less informative, more neutral title. Would you prefer several humans in disagreement participate in formal discussion on predetermined topic?
No, evolution is a religion. Actually, both creation and evolution are inherently religious.
Oh, I don't want to do this. But is it boring enough for me to use this episode's Get Out of Debunk free card? No, you strike me as the kind of guy who enjoys getting more annoying as the video wears on, so I think I'll save it for later. Alright everyone, strap yourself in for one of my long, boring rants. Skip to this time here to skip it, I would if I were you. Okay, so I'm going to challenge the assertion that evolution's religious, but first I need a good definition of religion to challenge it on. You haven't provided one, and I'm not sure if you're going to, so I looked around for one. I considered using the United States legal definition of religion because the only reason you people want to think evolution is a religion is that you want schools to have to stop teaching it, and the only definition that would actually be relevant for that is some kind of legal one. But I can't use that because, from what I can tell, it's so fuzzy and inconsistent that it might as well not even exist. Most of the other definitions I found required the belief in a god, and since there are major non-theistic religions, I just couldn't accept that. So finally I settled on one from about.com, which is maybe the broadest definition I've ever seen or could possibly accept. So here it is. The idea here is basically that something having any of these characteristics may qualify as a religion, but it doesn't require all of them. So we're going to go down this list real quick using your absurdly broad definition of a belief in evolution being an acceptance of everything from the Big Bang to genetic variation as the best current explanations for the observed features of the universe, and we'll see how inherently religious that acceptance is. Trait 1. Belief in something sacred, for example, gods or other supernatural beings. Aw, you got the very first one wrong. Oh well, minor setback. Trait 2. A distinction between sacred and profane objects. No, scientific theories ain't in the business of assigning sacredness or profanity. About the closest you'd ever get is really liking your new telescope. Trait 3. Ritual acts focused on sacred objects. Well, that wouldn't make much sense with no sacred objects. And no, using your new telescope every night does not count as a ritual. That's a job, or at worst a hobby. Trait 4. A moral code believed to have a sacred or supernatural basis. Nope, scientific theories have no inherent morality, which is why you Christians make that moral argument that says to pretend evolution isn't true even if it is because it has no inherent morality. Right? Trait 5. Characteristically religious feelings, awe, sense of mystery, sense of guilt, adoration, which tend to be aroused in the presence of sacred objects and during the practice of ritual. I gotta say, this one's pretty poorly and vaguely worded, so I'll try to interpret it as well as I can. As I said, there are no sacred objects and no rituals, and so none of those feelings can be triggered by them unless maybe you start to like your new telescope so much that you start speaking in tongues, but I'm pretty sure that's a personal issue. Adoration and guilt don't apply, since you'd have to be a bit weird to feel either of those toward a scientific theory. And I can only speak for myself about awe and a sense of mystery. For me, contemplation of the universe itself may occasionally provoke a sense of mystery and what would better be called wonder than awe, but scientific theories about it resonate with me intellectually, not emotionally. I think that's part of why a lot of people are simply bored by science until someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson comes along to give it some emotional appeal. Of course, what someone feels isn't very relevant to whether something's religious. There's probably someone out there who feels awe and a sense of mystery when they pick lint out of their belly button, so clearly this isn't exclusive to religion. What's more relevant is whether a belief system actually promotes these feelings as important companions to the acceptance of its claims. This definitely isn't true of science, but definitely is true of, say, Christianity. Trait 6. Prayer and other forms of communication with the supernatural. You can waste as much time praying as you want, but you're not doing it as a result of accepting evolution. Trait 7. A worldview or a general picture of the world as a whole and the place of the individual therein. This picture contains some specification of an overall purpose or point to the world and an indication of how the individual fits into it. No, and this is another case where the Christians say that themselves in the arguments they make. Just like with the moral argument, there's an argument that this is a good reason to pretend evolution isn't true even if it is. Evolution doesn't give life a purpose or a point, blah blah blah, so pretend creation is true. Trait 8. A more or less total organization of one's life based on the worldview. Evolution isn't a worldview, but I don't even know what it would mean to organize your life based on evolution. I guess you could, somehow, maybe. I never met anyone who did, unless maybe you count scientists and students who put in long hours, which would just be silly. In my experience, most people who accept evolution don't give it more than a passing thought, and those who do are mostly scientists, or students, or enthusiasts, or just people like me who like to expose charlatans like you. But here again, what's truly relevant is whether this is promoted by the belief system. Definitely not true as science, but there's this book called the Bible that has, a couple thousand pages telling you to do just that. Trait 9, a social group bound together by the above. Bing! Nah, I'm just kidding. Since none of the above apply, this can't apply either. Jeez. Your claim that evolution is a religion didn't fare so well, Mr. Dino. And that list is so comprehensive, I'm pretty sure it includes anything legally identified as a religion anywhere. Plus all the unrecognized cults and even just basic spiritual mumbo-jumbo. I, for one, remain unconvinced that I'm a member of a religion. In fact, Kent, the only characteristic of a religion you've even bothered to propose thus far for evolution is that it's believed for bad reasons, or as you call it, on faith, which is an okay start for a definition of faith. Fortunately, that's not true. There's a reason that, for example, the theory of evolution by natural selection has consistently led to successful predictions and has never been falsified despite being easily falsifiable. This is the actual theory I'm talking about, mind you, not your ludicrous straw man about dogs evolving from a rock. The same goes for all the other modern scientific theories accepted by scientific consensus that fall under your evolution umbrella term. The whole point of science is that its theories either account for all the evidence, or they're modified or replaced as necessary so that they continue to account for all the evidence, and therefore are believed for the best reasons available at any given time, which become better reasons over time. And by evidence, I mean the real evidence, not the flimsy products of your wishful thinking and confirmation bias. But, Kent, you know what? Let's pretend that none of what I just said is true, and that every theory that makes you feel all sad is wrong, and that all the evidence is fake, and all the scientists cling to their theories in spite of that. Hell, let's even pretend that they cling to their theories specifically because they want to convince people the Bible is wrong. Would that be a religion? Well, it'd certainly be obviously stupid and intellectually dishonest, so yeah, it has some superficial similarities to religion, but if it has no actual religious elements, it's still not a religion. It's just a stupid, unfounded belief held and promoted for really bad reasons, or just a straight-up hoax. Now, if they start worshipping nature, say, or if they actually believe God exists and they just want to shove his book back in his stupid face, then sure. At that point, it has actual religious traits. Fortunately, though, none of that is the case. It's just science, Kent.
These two timelines is the same information right here. I'll be referring to that throughout the seminar here. I cover this thing all the time. The Bible teaches about 6,000 years ago, God made everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a big flood that destroyed everything. 2,000 years ago, Jesus came. Here we are today, waiting for the Lord to come back in about 5 minutes. This is the Bible view of history. On this chart, 1 inch is 150 years. That's a long time. The 20 billion year chart on the bottom is a very different scale.
It's also pathetically inaccurate.
6 billion years and a bit difference. Whatever, they won't notice, and I can't be bothered to type more than one digit that isn't a zero.
But see, both views, creation and evolution, are inherently religious. You have to believe in creation or believe in evolution.
Wait, that's your definition of a religion? Are you seriously telling me that I just spent all that fucking time trying to fairly and thoroughly debunk this idea that evolution is a religion, using a detailed list of traits of religions, and you would have been happy with defining religion as anything you believe? Are you goddamn kidding me, Kent? I believe that I'm a fucking Walmart greeter, believe me, and trust me, asshole, greeting the tormented and sweatpanted damned souls who visit Walmart down here is not my fucking religion. But yeah, I mean, if you want to define religion as just something you believe, then our audiences are members of an insidious worldwide cult that believes they can watch videos on the internet. You have a distressingly poor understanding of how to use language effectively.
The difference between the two, though, is very simple. The evolution religion is tax-supported.
So are you. Sorry, I was trying to stay away from the fact that you're a convicted massive tax fraud who's coming up on 10 years in prison, since it's irrelevant to your arguments and it feels a little well-poisoning-y to me. But how could I resist that? Oh, and the fact that your audience laughed at that joke not only shows that they're too stupid to realize that your definition of religion is completely worthless, but they also don't realize that the tax exemption on churches means that your religion is enormously tax supported, since the rest of us have to pay, through our taxes, for all the services that your diseased welfare rat organizations enjoy for free.
So I asked the professor, where did the matter come from? He said, I don't know. I said, well, sir, would you please tell me where the laws came from? The universe is run by laws, gravity, centrifugal force, inertia. Who gave the laws?
We did. Human beings. Because scientific laws are nothing more than descriptions of how reality seems to work, which only exist on the paper where they were written down by people. An honest person would phrase the question as, why are the physics of the universe as they are, which is quite a good question that quite a few people are working quite hard to answer. But you aren't an honest person, so you pretended that scientific laws are not descriptions made by people, but rather something woven into reality itself, and then you asked a leading question that suggests the answer that the laws are the commands of a universal dictator. Have I used the word slimy yet in this series? Actually, nah, I'll save it for later, I'm gonna need it.
He said, we don't know that either.
What was this guy a professor of again? Architecture? English? Art history?
I said, sir, could you tell me where the energy came from? You know, it takes energy to make a big bang. Who bought the gas to run this machine anyway? He said, we don't know that either.
Yeah, we have a lot to learn about what started the Big Bang, and it's a pretty difficult task to figure that out. If it's even possible, it's going to take some time, and you know, if you're so impatient, you're not speeding things up any by telling everyone else that your made-up answer is totally right, and they should stop investigating right now or they'll totally burn in hell. And how many times do I have to tell you that you can see a car in the ditch without knowing why it's there?
I said, sir, could I ask you another question? He said, sure. What else would you like to know? Else? What do you mean else? You haven't told me nothing yet.
That'll happen when you ask a person who's clearly not a cosmologist questions about cosmology that not even cosmologists have figured out the answers to yet.
I said, does Berkeley have a merry-go-round? How many of you know what a merry-go-round is? You go round and round, round till you puke, okay? He said, no, we don't have a merry-go-round at Berkeley. I said, you ought to get one. You could learn some good science on a merry-go-round. If you put some fourth graders on a merry-go-round, are there any fourth graders in here tonight? Who's in fourth grade? All right, I like fourth graders. I spent the best 5 years of my life in the fourth grade.
Yeah, I know. That's when you wrote your Christian education doctoral dissertation. And as an aside, Mr. Hovind, that document, which is freely available on WikiLeaks for anyone who's interested, which should be everyone, is without exaggeration the greatest thing I have ever read. Truly, sir, it is a spectacularly compelling scholarly work which in academic rigor, accuracy, style, coherence, grammatical correctness, and spelling rivals even my own fourth grade homework. In fact, I enjoyed it so much that I chose to honor it by using its uniquely poignant opening sentence as the title for this series of videos. I apologize for the brief digression, but I am a very big fan of your magnificent work, Mr. Hovind, and I felt compelled to congratulate you on your achievement. Anyway, continue.
If the merry-go-round is going clockwise, when the kid flies off, the kid will be spinning clockwise until he encounters resistance, like a tree or telephone pole. That's because of a law in physics known as the conservation of angular momentum. You see, if a spinning object breaks apart in a frictionless environment, the fragments will all spin the same direction. It's very simple. It's because the outside is moving faster than the inside. And so it keeps the same direction of spin. The professor said, yes, I understand about the conservation of angular momentum. I said, well, good. I'd like to ask you a question then, sir. If the whole universe began as a swirling dot, like you said, why do two planets spin backwards?
Dude, are you deliberately tormenting me? A solar system, like a nebula, is different from a universe. What the hell is wrong with you? Okay, get this spinning singularity, spinning universe thing out of your head. It's nonsense, since spin is something that happens to matter within space-time and therefore wouldn't happen to a pre-Big Bang singularity. And the matter in the universe isn't composed of fragments from an explosion of some object. The Big Bang was an expansion of a universe, not a rock getting blowed up by TNT. But much more importantly, it's irrelevant since the spin of the planets is a totally separate issue. If you think that nothing in the universe can spin in a different direction than the Earth does as a result of, say, an impact, you must be the worst pool player of all time.
He said, that's interesting.
No, he didn't. No, he fucking didn't. Even if he was a professor of fish feeding at Berkeley, he didn't say that.
No, that's more than interesting. It's kind of hard on your Big Bang Theory. Not only that, 6 of the moons are spinning backwards. Why? He said, I don't know. Why do you think they're going backwards? I was hoping he was going to ask that. I said, well, sir, I believe it's very simple. You see, I believe in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and God did it that way on purpose, just to make the Big Bang Theory look stupid.
Damn it. I guess that doesn't work down here.
I do believe in the Big Bang, folks. I really do. The Bible teaches the Big Bang. 2 Peter 3:10. It says, the heavens shall pass away with a great noise. In the original Greek, that's a Big Bang. So there's going to be a Big Bang. It just didn't happen yet, that's all. So kids, if you go to school and some professor says, do you believe in the Big Bang? You should say, yes, I do, and you better get saved and get ready for it.
Please don't create more obnoxious proselytizing little shitbag kids. You've given us more than enough of those already.
By the way, if the Big Bang Theory were true, the matter would be evenly distributed. But it's not. It's lumpy. They're called galaxies, and in zillions of miles and nothing called voids. And to try to salvage the dumb Big Bang Theory, they've got all these wild theories of why isn't the matter evenly distributed?
Why are there galaxies? They've got all these wild theories, like gravity.
I don't know, maybe you're talking about something else, but you didn't make your point very clear. Either way, I have no idea where you got the idea that the theory can't be true unless the matter's evenly distributed. I guess from your ass, but if it were true, wouldn't that be a bit odd considering that you also assert that matter was distributed through the universe by some original object exploding and its fragments flying everywhere? A perfectly even distribution isn't exactly a defining characteristic of explosions.
They'll say, well, maybe there's black holes, or maybe there's antimatter.
Black holes have to do with galaxy formation. I'm not really sure what antimatter has to do with it. Did you maybe mean dark matter? It'd make more sense since you're talking about black holes and they and dark matter are both gravitational phenomena. Antimatter is kind of an odd thing to throw in there.
They got all this stuff. It's all trying to rescue this crazy Big Bang Theory.
Black holes and dark matter are explanations for observed gravitational effects. You gonna say those don't exist either? The effects we can directly observe firsthand? And what do they have to do with defending the Big Bang? It's possible that whatever idea you're trying to express would be interesting, but you stated it in such a vague, sloppy way that I'm not even sure what your claim is, let alone what implications it's supposed to have.
There are zillions of stars out there. I mean, lots and lots of stars. And we haven't even seen them all. If star births, they ought to at least equal star deaths, and they don't. We see a star blow up about every 30 years. It's called a nova or a supernova. Well, then how come there are only 300 dead stars out there that we can see, supernovas?
Good job taking shitty out-of-context information from the Institute for Creation Research. You know, if you actually want to find out how many supernovae occur on average, that's not really the best place to start. For an example of why, that 30 years number is just for the Milky Way galaxy. And it's actually a pretty optimistic estimate. I mean, it's pretty accurate, but there are others that are like 50 or 100 years. Of course, there are a lot of galaxies, so regardless of which number is best, a hell of a lot more than one will occur throughout the universe in that amount of time. But instead of telling you that slide just says that every 30 years there's a supernova. Anyway, I'm not really sure what question you actually wanted to ask. This slide asks, and I'll phrase it more eloquently, if one supernova is observed every 30 years or so in the Milky Way, why don't we see star births? The fact that this slide asks for evidence of star births as though you don't believe that they happen implies that you think that we haven't observed the birth of stars. But we have, and we currently are. If you go search for Hubble time-lapse videos of new stars being born, you'll find that we even have those. Of course, they don't start with a gas cloud and end with a happy little star, since that takes a pretty long time, but we have observed every stage of star formation by observing many different stars at overlapping stages, so in effect, when we piece it all together, there's smooth evidence from the beginning to the end of star birth. But I'll assume that you want to go with the question that you actually asked out loud, so first I need to decipher what you're actually asking. Since the first part of the slide is about the rate of supernovae in the Milky Way, my guess is that the second part refers to the number of observed supernova remnants in the Milky Way. In that case, your number of 300 is good enough that I'll use it. So, why do we only have 300 observed supernova remnants in the Milky Way? Well, at your fairly optimistic rate of 30 years between supernovae, 300 remnants takes us 9,000 years into the past. Observing remnants much older than that gets difficult. Supernova remnants aren't so easy to detect. They stop emitting visible light very quickly, and once they've faded from the visible spectrum, they'll only glow for maybe a few tens of thousands of years, becoming constantly less visible over that time, so in a sense, they disappear after a while. Basically, no matter how old the galaxy is, we wouldn't expect to see that many more remnants than we do currently, since they're constantly fading from visibility. We could probably do a little better with more advanced equipment, but not really that much. But I'm guessing you won't be satisfied with that kind of answer because it took more than one sentence to explain.
Huh. That's only a few thousand years worth, isn't it? There ought to be trillions of them. If evolution were true.
You've only presented the numbers for the Milky Way galaxy. Why would there be trillions of supernova remnants in the Milky Way galaxy alone? If they happen every 30 years, like you say, that would make the galaxy at least 30 times 2 trillion years old, or 60 trillion, which is well over 4,000 times older than the age proposed for the universe. I gave you the benefit of the doubt before and assumed that you forgot to mention that those figures were constrained to the Milky Way, but no. You actually wanted your audience to believe that they were for the whole universe. But, as they say, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. You've already demonstrated that you don't know the difference between the solar system and the universe, so why would I expect you to know the difference between the galaxy and the universe?
This fellow said I have a little hesitation in saying that a sickly pall now hangs over the Big Bang Theory.
You know, come to think of it, I'm actually kind of pissed off on behalf of all the actual Berkeley professors. Here you are, slandering their school by making your idiot foil a Berkeley professor. What does that say about the level of intelligence you think is required to be hired as faculty at Berkeley? Do you have some grudge against the school? Did they deny your application? Was Patriot Bible University your safety school? Huh. Actually, that's a pretty damn good reason to hold a grudge.
Yep.
Yep.
Now, if you want to believe it, that's fine. I don't care what anybody believes. That doesn't bother me. But see, the problem is they want to use my tax dollars to teach that to your kids in our schools. And that's where the problem comes in, okay? If you want to believe in the Big Bang, just enjoy yourself, but keep your religion at home, okay? Because it is a religion.
I just spent what in hindsight was probably an excessive amount of time explaining why that's complete bullshit, so I won't go over that again. But since nothing you've said has been interesting enough to earn my full attention, I've been reading through some more of your 1991 dissertation while you've been talking. And I found out something more about you. Specifically, I found out that your reason for calling evolution a religion is not the same between this video and that document. Now, it's possible that you changed your mind in the 10 years between your dissertation and your speech, but, well, I find it far-fetched that you bothered to think hard enough for that to happen. According to the document, you believe evolution is a religion based on some bizarrely distorted versions of the biblical text and history. For example, on page 15 you state that the overarching concept of evolution, as you define it, started in the Garden of Eden when the serpent told Eve that she could be like God and thereby injected the world with a new religion of evolutionism that made humans want to evolve themselves to be like God. And then it was perpetuated by the evolutionist Cain, who killed his brother because he was angry that he couldn't evolve to be more like God by trying to please God in a way that he came up with instead of a way that God came up with. Yes, audience, I'm serious, that's really in there. Your round-the-bend crazy, satanic, religious conspiracy theory bullshit should not influence public education. Sorry. Now, I know how much you love to repeat this thing about evolution being a religion. You repeat it because you think that by doing that, you can drill it into other people's heads and they'll just repeat it without thinking about it. That probably works on brain-dead fucking idiots and the horribly indoctrinated, but it's not going to work on me or most of my audience, so from this point on, there's not much point in me addressing it. So, it'll probably come up a good 1,500 more times, but I'll just skip it whenever it does. I just wanted to get those last few comments in.
This textbook says, as Earth formed, the surface was like the moon. There were hot pools of bubbling lava. I don't think so. My Bible says, the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters.
Well, my Bible says Ceiling Cat rode invisible bike over to waters.
So the Earth was not created a hot molten mass, it was created under water.
It doesn't say that. It says God moved on the surface of the waters, but it doesn't say where the waters were or where the Earth was in relation to them. Why not over water, or next to water, or in a universe that also contained water, or mixed thoroughly into water? And how does it being underwater necessarily prevent it from being a hot molten mass? And what does it even mean for an object in space to be underwater? This, kids, is why we don't use the Bible as a science textbook.
which means has to be less than 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees centigrade, or it wouldn't be water, it'd be steam.
Steam is water, but I guess it doesn't have a surface in the way liquid water does, so it's clear enough what you mean. Water doesn't always boil at 100 degrees centigrade, it depends on pressure, and in Genesis 1:2, the earth was without form and void. If it's a flat disk or a sphere covered in water with land underneath it, that's with form and not void, so to assume that that's what that means is contrary to what the passage literally says, which should concern you as a biblical literalist. It's a little unclear what the Earth is supposed to be here, so I'm not sure how I would draw it, but I would certainly draw a sphere of water all the way around it, basically orbiting in space, which would later be divided by the firmament. Of course, orbit isn't quite the right word, since not all points of a sphere could have orbital velocity and a correct trajectory, and all those areas would splash down to Earth very quickly. But whatever, just say God magic that part. My point here is that I'm not sure why you're arguing about this, because in the end it's not going to work for or against what you're arguing for or against. In effect, it'll have no effect. So why bother?
So the Earth was never a hot, molten mass, according to Scripture.
It never specifies either way, but actually some kind of constantly wildly jiggling hot molten mass, or maybe some sort of shapeless bunch of gas and dust, would be more in line with Genesis 1:2 than what you're proposing, because it'd have no lasting form and so could be called formless. It still wouldn't be empty, so it still wouldn't match, but at least it'd be closer. So much for taking the Bible literally. You're just making things up that don't fit the text and saying that's what it means. And you've done that to the second verse in the Bible. Can't you at least wait a chapter or two before you start calling God a liar?
Then when you look in the granite rocks, you find little tiny halos made of polonium.
Oh Christ, I'm glad I saved that get out of debunk free card. Fucking polonium halos have literally made me fall asleep on my feet before. Which was a bit weird considering I was lying down at the time. I guess it's partly because it's about geology, and to be honest, geology is just not really my thing. And it's one of those claims that I don't think anybody's really convinced by, it's just one of those things creationists talk about to try and sound more sciencey. And worst of all, I'd have to write a long, dry, scientific speech that'd pretty much just involve me repeating what other people have said, and when I don't have much original to say, even my mind goes numb with boredom. Besides, I don't have much time for it because my shift at Walmart starts in like 20 minutes. So I've left a bunch of links in the description that address it better than I can be bothered to do. If you just want an overview, check out Claire's video. But please, finish watching my video first because I don't have time to wait while you pause me and go watch it.
Then they tell them life got started about 3 billion years ago.
If I keep calling you on your inaccurate numbers every time, it's going to take up half the series, so I'm just going to not do that.
See, according to the theory, 20 billion years ago there was a big bang. 4.6 billion years ago the Earth cooled down, formed a hard rocky crust, and it rained on the rocks for millions of years and turned them into soup. And the soup came alive about 3 billion years ago.
Oh, there it was! I was waiting for you to do that, you bastard! Remember what I told you in episode 1, Mr. Hovind? I'll accept your definition of the word evolution as a convenient umbrella for many different theories in many different fields, but if you then refer to that group as though it is itself a theory, I'll have to strongly object. You managed to resist until almost 21 minutes into your original video. Hell, we're almost at the end of episode 2 already. I'm impressed. Of course, as impressed as I am with you by the abysmal standards you set for yourself, I am, as usual, disappointed in you by even the most minimally acceptable standard. What you're trying to do is put the idea into people's heads that the theory of evolution by natural selection and entirely distinct theories of cosmology and so on are somehow one monolithic idea. In other words, you want people to believe that you can't, for example, accept biological evolution without also accepting the Big Bang. Of course, that is simply false, and your sneaky tactic to try to convince the uneducated that it's otherwise is incredibly dishonest. It's no wonder people struggle so hard with basic scientific terms like theory. You know full well the meaning of the words that you're using, and you know full well that what you're describing as the theory of evolution, being basically everything described by cosmology, astronomy, geology, biology, and a multitude of other fields, is not described by one theory, is not covered by one scientific discipline, is not the theory of evolution by natural selection, that's for sure, and that you can accept any single thing under that umbrella without accepting any of the others. For a while there, I thought you might retain that one microscopic shred of integrity and keep using the word evolution in the stupid but relatively harmless way we agreed on at the start, but as usual, I somehow respect creationists more than they respect themselves, to the point of being far too optimistic about how far they'll go to reassure their flock that the absurdities they believe are actually true.
You're a fucktard, aren't you, Kent? You're a fucktard, aren't you, Kent? a fucking joke. But what is really sad is people out there buying to the shit he preaches.
Very big fan of your magnificent work, Mr. Hovind, and I felt compelled to congratulate you on your achievement. Anyway, continue.
Oh,
Okay, we make the anyway continue again?
son of a bit. No, the whole thing.
Okay.